probably heard the rule: buy term, invest the difference. Retire $500,000 ahead of the person who bought whole life. It gets repeated in comment sections, in finance videos, in kitchen table arguments, until it stops sounding like advice and starts sounding like a law of math. So today we're going to do something almost nobody who repeats that rule actually does. We're going to run the real numbers, from a real quote, through the real 30 years the rule asks you to commit to, and see exactly what's left of the promise when it's finished. Here's the rule in plain terms. Term life insurance covers you for a fixed number of years, 10, 20, 30, and pays your family a death benefit only if you die during that window. Nothing builds up behind it. No cash value. Just protection, price cheap for as long as you keep paying. Whole life insurance covers you forever, and part of every payment builds a cash value you can borrow against or eventually leave behind. It costs far more for the same death benefit because part of that price is doing double duty as a forced savings account. The rule says, skip the built-in savings account, buy the cheap protection, and put the money you saved into the market yourself. Both prices make actuarial sense once you see why they're so far apart. A term policy only has to pay out if you die inside a fixed window, and most people don't. So it's priced like the temporary, unlikely to be used protection it is. A whole life policy is guaranteed to pay out eventually because everyone dies eventually, and it also guarantees a minimum rate of growth on the cash value along the way. You're not paying more for the same product twice over. You're paying more for a different, more certain one. For a healthy 30-year-old buying $500,000 of coverage in 2026, that's not a hypothetical gap. It's a real one, sitting in real quotes. A 20-year term policy for that coverage runs about $28 a month. A whole life policy for the exact same coverage runs about $440 a month. Subtract one from the other, and you get $412 a month. The difference the rule tells you to invest every single month for as long as you keep both quotes side by side. So let's do exactly what the rule says. Take that $412 and instead of sending it to an insurance company, send it into the stock market every month for 30 years. History gives us a real number to use here, not a guess. Since 1957, the S&P 500 has averaged about 10.4% a year, with dividends reinvested. Run $412 a month at that rate for 30 years, and the total comes to a little over $1,015,000. $1,015,000 from a $400 decision every month. That's the number that ends most of these videos. It's the number that turns buy term and invest the difference from a tip into a mic drop. And on paper, it's correct. The arithmetic is real math, not a trick. If the market keeps averaging what it has averaged since 1957, and every one of those $412 actually leaves your account and lands in an index fund, on schedule, for 360 straight months without missing one, that number is genuinely what you get. It's also the number that gets compared, often loosely, against the whole life policy's own $500,000 death benefit, as if a growing pile of invested cash and a fixed insurance payout were the same kind of thing. They're not. One is a guarantee that arrives the moment you die, market conditions irrelevant. The other is whatever 30 years of investing actually produced, available only if you're still alive to spend it. Worth holding on to that distinction. It matters again in a minute. Notice, too, how many conditions are stacked inside that one sentence. Before we test them, one quick note. Every number in this video, plus the 4 questions worth asking before you sign anything, are laid out on one free page, the Insurance Loophole Checklist. Link in the pinned comment below. Here's the first condition. The market averages 10.4% and you personally earn 10.4% are not the same sentence, and the gap between them has a name. A research firm called DALBAR has spent decades measuring it. in a report called the Quantitative Analysis of Investor Behavior. They don't measure what the S&P 500 did. They measure what actual investors in actual funds actually earned, accounting for when people bought, when people panicked and sold during a crash, and when people climbed back in only after most of the recovery had already happened. Selling low in a panic and buying back in high out of relief is a pattern DALBAR has documented across nearly every market cycle in the study's history. Not because those investors are unusually reckless, but because it's what most people do when a headline says the market just dropped 20%. In DALBAR's most recent 20-year study, running through the end of 2024, the average equity fund investor earned 9.24% a year against the market's 10.35%. That's a gap of just over 1 percentage point, and it's actually one of the narrower gaps DALBAR has ever recorded. Go back to their 30-year window, ending in 2015, and the same study found the average investor earning 3.66% a year, while the market itself did 10.35. Same research firm, same method, a very different 30 years to live through. So let's rerun the exact same $412 a month, no other changes, at the rates real investors actually captured, instead of the rate the index posted. At the recent narrower gap, 9.24%, 30 years of investing, the difference grows to about $793,000. At the older, wider gap, 3.66%, the same monthly habit grows to about $269,000. Read those three numbers side by side. 1,015,000, 793,000, 269,000. Same rule, same $412, same 30 years on the same calendar. The only thing that changed between them is which version of the market your money actually behaved like. And that version isn't something you choose in advance. It's something 30 years of your own decisions decide for you, one crash at a time. Here's the second condition nobody puts on screen. The rule assumes the term policy itself is still there, quietly doing its job for the entire 30 years. And that assumption has its own real-world data problem. Industry persistency studies, tracked jointly by LIMRA and the Society of Actuaries, put the annual lapse rate on term policies at around 6.4%. In plain terms, in any given year, roughly 1 out of every 14 people holding a term policy stops paying it. Not because they died, because the payment lapsed, or the level term period ended and the renewal price came as a shock, or life simply got in the way for a few months longer than the grace period allowed. That renewal shock is a predictable mechanic, not bad luck. A term policy is priced for your age at the start of the term, and renewing after year 20 means getting repriced as an applicant 20 years older, sometimes at several times the original premium overnight. Plenty of families quietly let the policy go at exactly that moment. Stack that up year after year, and the industry's own persistency research shows more than half of individual life policies can lapse within about a decade of being written. Here's why that number matters for this specific rule, and not just as a side fact. The same lack of automatic discipline that makes investing the difference fall short of the textbook number is, for a lot of households, the same lack of discipline that lets the term policy lapse too. Nobody signs up planning to let either one slide, but buy term and invest the difference is really two separate 30-year commitments running side by side. One to a brokerage account, one to an insurance company. And the data on both says a meaningful share of families don't sustain both all the way through. If both quietly slip, that family isn't sitting on $793,000 or even $269,000. They're sitting on whatever's left of a habit that stopped, with no death benefit standing behind them either. None of this means the rule is wrong. For a household that automates the difference the same week they sign the term policy, a standing transfer into an index fund, dated the same day the insurance payment leaves the account, the real math still works strongly in their favor, even measured at the harsher of the two historical rates. That family doesn't need the market to average 10.4% every year. They just need a system that keeps showing up on their behalf, whether they're paying attention that month or not. It's the same logic already built into most workplace retirement plans, where the contribution leaves your paycheck before you ever see it and never gets the chance to be talked out of it. There's no reason the invest the difference half of this rule has to work any differently. A recurring transfer, dated the same day as the insurance payment, turns a monthly decision you might skip into a one-time decision you already made. So the question worth carrying to your own kitchen table isn't really term or whole life. It's smaller than that and more useful. When you say you're going to invest the difference, is that an automatic transfer with a date attached to it? Or is it a good intention you're trusting your future self to remember, unprompted, every month for 30 years straight? Many families who choose term go in quietly assuming the second version will feel just like the first. The data on investing behavior and the data on policy persistence both point to the same gap between intending to invest and automatically investing, as exactly where the promised number quietly shrinks long before anyone notices it happening. Nobody ever quite points to where the $500,000 figure originally came from. It shows up in comment sections and finance videos as a round, borrowed number, repeated so often it started to sound like a citation. It was never a citation. It was always a scenario, one specific set of assumptions, dressed up as a guarantee. So, is buy term and invest the difference a lie? The math in it isn't. Every number in this video is real, sourced, and repeatable on your own calculator this weekend. The word doing the lying is the small one sitting in the middle of the sentence. Invest the difference was never one decision, made once, at the kitchen table, the day you signed the term policy. It's 360 separate decisions made automatically or not really made at all. Get that one word right, and the rule holds up better than almost anything else in personal finance. Leave it to memory, and the $500,000 everyone keeps quoting was never really there to begin with.